Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Mr. Wiz here. If you are new to this channel, we build video games. So right now we are working our way through learning about Unity. So right now behind me is the program. We started a couple lessons ago, but in the last lesson, we just built this building with the ball that we gave gravity to by adding rigid body to it. So when I hit play, the ball does roll down the stairs as we expect it to. So we did all that in the last video. We're going to be adding some more things to this program today. Specifically, we're looking at advanced materials today. So it goes more than just the appearance. With materials, you can do some pretty interesting things, including adding bouncing and physics materials. So we're going to talk about that today as well. So first things first, let's go ahead and hop over to our material folder. So in our asset folder, we created these three folders a while back. In the materials section, we have the materials that I used for my prefabs, and now I just added this SpongeBob picture before starting the recording. Just a reminder, you can add images into Unity by simply right-clicking, going to Import New Asset, and then grabbing the picture you want to use. So I added SpongeBob because I wanted to use it as an example when I do my layering here in a moment. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and create a new material. So to create a new material in the material folder, we've done this before, but just a little refresher. We're going to right click, we're going to go to create, and then we're going to scroll down to where it says material. So now I have a new material. It is an empty material. I'm not going to worry about naming it just yet. I can name it later once I decide how I want to use it. But let's go ahead and make some adjustments to the material. So over here on the right-hand side, we've got the things that we've edited before. So we have albedo, where we've edited colors in the past. We have metallic, we have smoothness, we have all this stuff. What I'm going to do instead of creating a colored material like I did with my other materials, I'm going to create a material that has a texture on it. So a texture is essentially just an image that we put on top of our materials. So that's what I got SpongeBob here for. Now, SpongeBob's not a very good texture, but I got him so that I can show you how tiling works. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to click and drag SpongeBob, and I'm going to place him inside the square in front of albedo. You do not need to copy me for this part. You can copy me in a few moments when I get to the part we're actually doing. This is just an example. But I'm dragging SpongeBob into the square in front of albedo. And what that does, you'll see a little icon here now. The material now looks like a picture of SpongeBob. So if I drag the material and put it on something, I'm going to put it on the building. Now we have, on the cube, a picture of SpongeBob on all sides of the cube. So that is how my texture is currently working. So the reason I did this before getting to the part that we're actually going to do is because I wanted to show you how tiling works. Tiling is a very important part of creating realistic textures, but it's something that my students tend to get a little bit confused about. They have a hard time understanding until they have actually seen it in person. So right now, on my material, down below where we have the colors, metallic, smoothness, and all that, down below where it says emission, we have a section here that says tiling. Now, I want you to notice tiling actually appears twice. It appears here, and it also appears a little bit farther down. We're just looking at the first one. We're not looking at the second tiling section. We're just looking at the first one. So right now it says X1, Y1. What that means is that the image is being used one time in the X direction and one time in the Y direction. And that creates a single image like what we see here. If I change this number, so I'm going to change the X to 2, now you can see the image is being used twice in the X direction, but still only once in the Y direction. Do you see that? So it is tiling. It is creating tiles. So there's 2 tiles in the X direction and only 1 in the Y direction. If I change the Y that has 1 to 2, now I have 2 tiles in the X direction and 2 tiles in the Y direction, which creates a total of 4 tiles. So this is what tiling is. It's taking the image that we're using as our texture, and it's breaking it down into smaller pieces and tiling them, just like you might see tiles in a kitchen or a bathroom or something like that, right? And I can decide how many times I want it to tile just by changing this number here. So maybe I want it to tile 5 times in the X direction. So now it's doing 5 times in the X direction and only twice in the Y direction. I can decide, how I want that to do. Maybe 3 times in the Y direction. So now I've got a different type of tiling. Now, normally, you would never do this with an image like the SpongeBob picture. The purpose of tiling is to create better details. So we're going to change this in a minute, but I wanted you to see how this works. So X is choosing how many times it tiles in the X direction, and Y is saying how many times it tiles in the Y direction. So we're going to change this now to a different image. We're going to add some actual textures that look realistic, because that's going to be our goal now, is to create realistic materials. So in Unity, the Unity Asset Store, you can do searches for textures, and there's a lot of them. So you can literally just type up here, texture, and you will find a ton. And I can, of course, switch them to free. So here's a bunch of free textures, but of course I can narrow down my search. So maybe I want to look for a brick texture for my building. Now I can narrow it down to the free ones. There are 92 free things just for brick textures. That's a lot. So here we've got a lot of pre-made textures in Unity, and some of these are really good quality. You do want to be careful when you're going with good quality. So for instance, if I go with the 4K version, if I'm making an actual game, using high resolution pictures just slows my game down. It creates a little bit of lag sometimes in the game. So often you don't want to go with the best quality picture unless you are building something for like a PS5, right? Normal gaming, you don't need high resolution images. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff here. So the Unity Store is a great place to find free textures. But what I wanted to tell you guys is you don't have to go to the Unity Store to find textures for materials. You can find textures for materials just on Google. There's tons of free stuff. So what I like to do, I'll usually go to the Unity Store just to see what they have. But if I don't see something that jumps out to me, I will just go to Google and I will do a search for what I'm looking for. So here I did a search for seamless marble texture. That word seamless is important. Do you know what seamless means? Or why I included it into my search? Why would I include seamless into my search? So here's what seamless means. Seamless means that when I tile them, like I did with SpongeBob here, I won't be able to tell when looking at it where one tile starts and the other one ends. So with SpongeBob, it is definitely not seamless. I can easily see all the tiles, right? I can look at it and I can count there's 5 across this way and there are 3 down. But if I was using a seamless texture, it would be impossible for me to tell because they line up in such a way that you can't tell when one starts and one ends. So whenever I do a Google search for textures, I always include the word seamless into my description. And then it's just a matter of finding the one that you want to use. So I did a search for seamless marble because I do want to use marble in my building. I think it would look pretty cool. So I found this one right here that claims to be seamless. We're going to go ahead and download it. So you just right click on the image, save image as, and then you can save it into your downloads, right? Then when you get to the program, I clicked on it wrong. There we go. You would just import it by right clicking and going to import new asset and finding the image that you did your search for. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this video real quick. Please pause the video. Go find a texture that you want to use for your building. Feel free to find more than one. So if you want to use a different texture on the stairs and you're using the building, that's fine. Maybe you want to use different textures for different parts of the building, that's fine. But go ahead, take a moment, go find your textures either on Google or in the Unity Asset Store, okay? Pause the video, I'll see you in a sec. All right, I'm back. So I found 2 marble textures that I kind of liked. So we're going to play around with both of them. I might decide to use both or I might decide to only use one. We'll see how it goes. So I'm going to change the material that I have SpongeBob's face on. I'm going to go ahead and put one of these marbles on there instead. So let's drag and drop it into the albedo. Oop, I missed it. Let me try that again. Boom. All right. So now I need to play around with my tiling. So right now it's still set to 5.3 because that's what I had for SpongeBob. But if you look at it, you can kind of tell what I'm talking about. Just with the naked eye, for what you can tell, you can't really see the seams, can you? it's hard to tell where the picture starts and stops. If you're really detail-oriented, you can almost see the squares, but it takes a lot of focus to see where it starts and stops. That's the idea of seamless, right? So now I just need to decide what I think looks best. If I had 1, 1, the image gets stretched out and it's really big, and that's actually not bad for this one. 2, 2, and keep in mind they don't have to be the same number. I could use 5 in the X direction and 2 in the Y direction. That doesn't look half bad. I kind of like that. So yeah, go ahead and create your material if you haven't already created it. Put your image on there. Put the material on the object you want to put it on in your world and start changing the tiling to see what looks best. Once you've done that, you can put that on multiple things in your world. So here I'm putting it on, I don't think I'm going to put it on the stairs, but I think I do want to put it on the columns. So I'm going to use this material in a few different things. That looks pretty good, actually. I like this marble look. Looks really good. All right, I'm going to use a different one for the stairs. So I'm going to create a new material. And on this one, I'm going to use the second marble one that I found. I'm going to drag that into my albedo. And I'm going to use this one on the stairs. And then I'll have to decide how I want to layer it. If you don't, I'm sorry, I said layer. I keep saying layer. I meant tile. I need to figure out how I want to tile it. If you don't tile it at all, remember it stays at 1, 1, where it takes the image and it stretches it. So I don't like the look of that at all. So I definitely want to tile it. Let's see. Maybe you go with a big number here. That's not bad. So you got to decide what looks good for you. So that's not bad. I think I'll stop there. So I've got my building done. It is textured the way that I want it to be. You can also put textures on round objects. They're going to be a little bit different. If you put it on a round object, basically, instead of like with the cube, where it put one picture on all sides, it takes the one image and it stretches it around. So it is harder to find good textures for round images. So for instance, let me just use the example of SpongeBob again. If I put SpongeBob on the ball, that's what he looks like, right? It stretches him in a really weird way. Let's focus in on it, and you can see what I'm talking about. So it takes that one picture and it just wraps it around the entire ball and kind of distorts the image a lot. So it is tricky to find textures for round objects. You can still do it, but it does take a little bit of work to find a good texture. So I'm going to pause again. Go ahead and finish up with your textures. Okay, we're back. So hopefully you've got some textures on your building, on your steps, on your ball. I wanted to demonstrate real quickly here the challenge of putting a good material or a good texture on a ball. So I tried to find wraps for a basketball, using the same trick of doing a basketball to seamless texture. And as you can tell, that does not look like a basketball. So this is using this one right here, which looks pretty good. The picture looks pretty good, but when it wraps around the image, it loses the realism of the basketball. Then I tried some other ones here. Here's another one that when I put it on, still not quite a basketball. You can see some similar things, but it's still pretty far off. The one that I found that works best is this odd-looking one here, which doesn't even really look like a basketball, but when it wraps around the image, gets pretty close. So let me go back to the material. There we go. So here we actually have something that actually does resemble a basketball for the most part, right? It's not perfect. It's got something kind of weird happening there at the top, but you know it's pretty close, right? So yes, finding good materials for round objects like balls are going to be very difficult. So good luck with that. Of course, there are a lot of free things in the Unity Asset Store that are worth checking out that might be easier than just finding textures online when it comes to spheres in particular. So if I hit play now, I've got textures on my building, I have textures on the ball, and it still rolls down like it's supposed to. So far, so good. All we've really done is played around with the visual aspect of our building. Now I'm going to show you guys physics materials that will change the way the ball acts. So still in our material folder, I'm going to right click, I'm going to go to create, and instead of going to material, instead of going there, I'm going to go a little farther down to the one that says physics material. So these are different types of materials. I'm going to select physics material. In the physics material, I'm going to go ahead and just name this material bounce, so I know what it does, because I'm going to create a bouncing material. All right, so in this physics material that I just named bounce, I have over here some different things I can change. It's friction, it's bounciness, and other fun stuff here. So bounciness, we're going to go ahead and change the bounciness to 1. 1, I believe, is the maximum bounciness. So if I hit play now, rather than just rolling down the stairs, my ball should essentially bounce down the stairs. Let's take a look at it and see if it works. Oh, wait. I just forgot something silly. What did I forget to do? Help me out. You figure it out? I forgot to put it on the ball. I created the material, but I didn't actually put it on the ball. All right, so with my bounce material, how do I put the bounce material on the ball? Watch closely. Here we go. Magic about to happen. Very fancy, very advanced. I'm going to click and hold the bounce material. Clicking and holding. I'm going to drag it, drag it, drag it, and I'm going to drop it onto the ball. Boom. Now, how can you tell if it actually worked? If I click on the ball and I look at all the stats over here in the inspector window, I should now notice inside of my sphere collider, it says material bounce. So that's the material that I just put on there. Okay? So now let's hit play and see if it works. There we go. Do you guys see the difference? Instead of just rolling down, it actually bounces down the stairs. Let's watch it again. There we go. Here, I'm going to move it to a different part of my screen. I'm going to have it bounce onto the dome back there. So that'll be really obvious. Let's check it out now. Yeah, there we go. You can definitely see the bounce now. So, yeah, that's the bounce material. Now, like I said, there are other things you can change. You can change its friction, which kind of affects how quickly it slows down from the bounce. You can also change here where it says bounce combine average. This one I don't usually mess with because it takes away the realism of the game. But maybe you're making a game where you don't want the bounce to be super realistic. You can have the bounce set to maximum, to minimum, or to multiply. So in the real world, when an object bounces, it loses momentum every time that it bounces, right? So if you drop a bouncy ball and it bounces off the floor and it comes back up, it's not going to come all the way up to your hand. It's going to come up partial, and then when it bounces again, it's going to come up a little bit less. When it bounces again, it's going to come up a little bit less, right? So if you change these to maximum, it doesn't really do that. It just kind of stays at maximum bounciness. And ended up with a very, very, wow, it just like bounced over everything. So I don't usually change those, but feel free to play around with them just to see what happens. You're welcome to play around with it. But if you're making a realistic game, normally you would leave these at average. Now, you can also change the bounciness. If I don't want it to be 0.1, maybe I want it to be 0.5. I can change how much the ball bounces, right? There we go. Now it's not bouncing as much as it was before. So feel free to play around with that. That was the big takeaway today. I wanted to teach you guys how to build materials that have textures that can be tiled. And I also wanted to show you how to build physics materials for bouncing. So if you learned something new today, please make sure you click that like button. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe. And then I'll see you guys next time.